All right, Sam. So going back to this past weekend with Troy Dannon's press conference and everything, DB and I were just talking about the new eyes and everything that he had commented about. I was curious just because I've started to hear more of a trend, whether it's, DB brought up how we've heard from Matt Rhule at Big Ten Media Days, how we've heard some of the offseason press conferences from Fred Hoiberg and some of the other coaches just in general circumstance. I thought Troy wrapped up everything really well into a nice, neat little Nebraska bow where it sounded like everything is kind of flowing in the same motion. Everyone is rowing the boat in the same direction. When was the last time that you got that same impression from the Nebraska athletic director down to almost all of the coaches of the major sports across Nebraska athletics?
Oh, again, I think, and Damon knows this, I think Trev Alberts did a pretty good job. So I don't think that Troy is now, again, obviously Scott Frost was Trev Alberts' first football coach, so there may not have been total alignment.
Yeah,
the
reason Trev's not going to get credit in that discussion is because his number one hire was never in agreement with him.
You mean
Frost? No, I mean Frost.
Right. He didn't hire Frost.
Well,
I agree.
Do you know why I say he did? Because he had that tough year where he was maybe going to keep him, maybe he wasn't. He decided to. So, in essence, that's a hire.
Right. Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's
for me.
Yeah, I get it. So yeah, I mean, I think the alignment's important. We've talked about it. I think everybody's clear on what's going to happen. What I would say about Dannen that's good and strong about him as an AD is that, he's kind of experienced the full spectrum of administration. So like he understands what it's like as a very small school or a small sport coach. Like he gets it because he was the guy that was, unfolding the tables and, working state tournaments and having to do all those small things. So like he knows coaches from the tiniest towns in Iowa, that kind of stuff. So like he gets it from that perspective. The other thing though, is that he really understands the whale. He does. He's got a skill set there. He's really, really good with big money boosters. He's really good with big profile coaches. Like he's got a talent there. And Rhule is kind of down to earth, so he's not necessarily, head in the clouds kind of guy, but Dannon's got a skill. He's got a skill set with big sport coaches too. That is rare, and the boosters like him. And I don't know that, I don't know that everybody liked Trev. I did, but I can understand where he would be a little bit challenging for some people.
You know what I like, because you mentioned with Coach Rhule and being down to earth. One of the cool things about Coach Rhule is if you're going to be engaging or get him engaged in a conversation, and it's going to have substance, right? I.e. fiscal savvy or settlement hearing or whatever, you can't BS him. So if Dannen and Coach Rhule are going to be on the same page, and that Coach Rhule is going to be he's going to look under every rock, he's going to check every turn, every stone. If you can't match that, you can't hold his attention, right? You're just going to be a necessary evil. So the fact that I think he can have those conversations with Dannen on a higher level, there's the mutual respect there that I think it means a ton in terms of their work compatibility, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I do. I think that there's different personalities that you probably have to work through and work with, and so I think Rhule's personality is in my opinion pretty easy to work with.
Well, when your coach is gonna want to know as much or more than you do as the decision maker, so he's well informed. Like it just keeps everybody. Like I think there's a mutual respect there.
I agree. I like that.
Me
I
too.
Think that's good. That's good for a coach. Sorry, there's a truck backing up out here.
You're okay.
I like that for a coach. That's my. I think that's probably a good place to be. They don't all have to be exactly the same. I think there's a place for the let's keep the main thing coach. And I feel like I've got a system and a culture, and I'm going to work that and not get too far into the weeds. I think Matt Rhule likes getting into the weeds, and quite frankly, I think this program needed a coach who could.
Yep.
Like I think it was time for a coach who could come in and say, like, hey, there was that piece of lint on the floor in the hallway during the recruiting weekend. Why didn't anybody pick it up? Like, I think that's part of who he is. Like, I think he's that guy. He's a detail mind, and he wants everything to be a certain way. And I think that and he's friendly about it, but I think he has high standards, which is part of why you've seen some of the staff turnover in a shorter period of time. Because I feel like he had to, we need to get another person in here who understands this place, and it's maybe not the places I've been before, but it's this specific place, and here's what I need to do. And so, I think he's been willing to challenge himself too. And so, I think Dan's a real good fit for that. He's a really, really good fit. And because I think Rhule's team is one that's like, okay, well, we want you down here in the trenches with us as we go through every single little detail.
Yeah.
And I think Dannon's like, we will go down there with you. And I think Trev was more, no, you guys can figure it out. And again, I understand both perspectives, but I think that the coach Rhule probably prefers that AD who's down in the. Now, my sense is that Hoiberg isn't quite as much like that, and that's not a critique of Hoiberg. I think Fred's wants to handle things a slightly maybe different way, and can handle a lot of things on his own, and maybe isn't necessarily asking for, hey, can we get this flavor of whatever at our recruiting dinner. Like, I think Fred has a pretty good sense of what he wants to do, and so I think Fred's probably a little more lower key. Now he's got to win, but I think that's how I mean. It just takes different, and not every coach is going to be the same. Some coaches are going to be one way, another. I think John Cook was probably a pretty like, hey, what do you think of this? And what do you think of this? And I don't know that Danny Busboom Kelly is going to be as much like that. I think to be clear, I think she's a really, really good coach, and she's already shown the ways in which she's willing to change. But I think she's probably going to be slightly more, hey, we're going to play volleyball and we're going to win a lot, and if I need something, I'll let you know.
Yeah, it's a lot like, and you can relate to this, Sam. It's a lot like parenting, right? Where kind of gone are the days where your kids are like, oh, because I said so, right? It's much more inquisitive. You get a lot more wise. They kind of do their own homework, right? They're their own Bereans. And I think with athletic directors now, coaches have so much information readily available to them about what other schools are doing and what the new rules are. And so it's not so much as, well, these are the mandates, do it this way. It's more like, okay, this is the landscape. I know you guys are well aware. And then that's where the conversation starts, right? It's not so much, well, because I'm your boss and I tell you, like, that's not really the dynamics, if that makes sense, kind of what I'm saying. I think that's how these coaches are working. And I can track with that because I think it's a reflection of how the real world works. Like, gone are the days of because I said so.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's, you're trying to work with a lot of different personalities. And yes, as it relates to student athletes, you're having to it's harder to do a one size fits all approach. I'm really intrigued, for example, to see how Bill Belichick handles going to college, because I don't know that that's going to work, whatever he has in mind. So he's going to, we'll have to see if he's able to adjust to collegiate athletes who, quite frankly, can't handle some of the things that he may want them to handle.
Or bring other dynamics to their job, which he's never been accustomed to, right? It's like, my girlfriend said this, or my biology class is this, or like those are just it was kind of like Callahan, right? Where guys start bringing these issues to them that impact the desired outcome. There has to still be that relatability if you're going to get through to those players. Now, probably more than ever. Yeah. I mean, I think,
now probably more than ever, I suppose. It's interesting.
There's
We'll
dynamics
see how
involved. There's dynamics involved of finances, and there's freedom of movement.
Sure. Yep. There is. I think kids are a little bit more bottom line and almost cynical in a way. So if you can break through that cynicism, you can probably get a little bit of, like my daughter's going to be a senior, and I kind of, get a sense of just people's whatever. I don't know that I would say that, like, there's a lot of, there's always these folks who will say, well, kids are snowflakes today. And I don't know if kids in this generation are that. I don't think that. I don't see that. I think there's actually, and maybe it was because of whatever reason, the kids that are my daughter's age and my daughter too, they're pretty tough-minded, like bottom line people. I wouldn't describe them as like super naive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think probably what Rhule is running up against today is a little bit of like, do you actually care about me? I've been surrounded by really transactional people who aren't necessarily giving me everything I want, but like
I'm vibing with that. I think that's accurate.
Yeah. So like, I think, do you really care about me? And then, like, when you tell me no, or you discipline me, not like physically, but you know what I mean? Like you chastise me, or you criticize me, or you hold me accountable, can I stay in there because I know that you care? And
that's where he's winning. That's where he's winning. That's the part that I really, really admire about Coach Rhule, because especially now that I think he trusts his coordinators. Let me know what you think about this, Sam. That that you get a Holgerson type, and you get a Coach Butler type, and you have some Snow influence, and you trust your O-line coach. He's free to individually put his fingerprints on wherever or whatever or whomever he wants to, with exactly what you're talking about. Year one, it was, hey, I've been here. I've done this. I've been to the pro level. Like, why would you want to fight me? Like, why do you want to argue with me as a player? Mm-hmm. To now, it's like, oh, I've got some cachet now. I've helped you guys weather the storm. Okay. Now we know as players, we don't always need him to tell us why we do it. We now have an understanding of why we do it. You know what I mean? I think that's the key.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. And I think there's a why factor there that, again, I think kids can understand the why. It's more, well, I don't like, I do or I don't like the why. And, beyond that, like, here's how I intend to resolve that. Like, and so I think more what happens is there's a little bit of like, kids want to kind of sort of self-style it like it's an a la carte way of going about things. And I think kids probably realize pretty quickly that, like, you're not going to get everything you want. And so you got to try to find somebody who you trust, and maybe they don't agree with everything you agree with, but you relatively trust them. And I think that's probably part of the challenge today. So, like, the thing that I get a lot from, like, kids my daughter's age and a little bit younger is just skepticism of, like, are you an authentic person? Or are you kind of giving me a line? Or not so much. Like, I think there was probably a generation, I don't know, 10 year.
It's right older than them. It's the high 20s, right. Whatever that is.
Right. They were like, hey, yeah, give me a line. Tell me whatever. I want to hear it because I want to hear you agree with me.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just saying that, I think what's changed is that kids are actually, like, today are not so much like that. High school seniors, college freshmen are more like, I want to know what you actually think, and then I may decide that I do or don't like it. But authenticity is becoming really important. It's not as much about, hey, I want you to say what I think, and I want you to feel the same way I do about things. It's not like that anymore. I think people are more willing. Kids are today, or those high school seniors, college freshmen, are more willing to have a give and take or disagree, or it's not because I said so, but it's like, I want to know who you really are. And then I want to know if you care about me, even if I don't agree with you or I question you.
That's
it's a little bit different, and I do think Rhule's good.
That's incredible because not only do I think that's the AD coach relationship, Sam, what you're describing is what I'm fascinated about with watching this staff work together because I think it's a lot of what you're saying. I mean, why else would Coach Holgorsen be here with Coach Rhule if it wasn't about what you're describing right now? It's absolutely Coach Rhule's authenticity in what he asked of Dana and like what the blueprint was. Like you're not going to get Coach Snow to hop on board if he doesn't think that as good of friends as they are. He told him no once before, right? Yeah. You think it's not about the authenticity? I think it absolutely is. And then there's where do we agree to this? Coach Eckler will tell you during the interview with Coach Rhule, that was what you're describing is huge in terms of authenticity. Yeah.
And Holgersen's that. So that's a good thing about him. And he has a very important job. He really does. You know, he's in some ways he's like the second head coach. So hopefully he's ready to crank up that offense and get it going. You know, if he is, then I think they could have a really big season.
All right, Sam. So just you talking about just the authenticity in the coaching, the staff from the top down. How does that bleed then into the players on the field, right? Because that's one of the keys of the year 3 with Rhule is that you had the guys that have grown up a little bit more and they've taken their lumps, and they definitely did a couple of times last year. But does that new blood of authenticity, the authentic leadership that you're kind of talking about, the DB's mentioning, does that lead into more player leadership that they're able to, I guess, just control that environment in their own locker room a little bit more just with themselves, and it doesn't have to come from Rhule as often?
Maybe. You know,
that's the goal, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. It's contingent. I mean, so many of those variables are contingent upon success and contingent upon like a lot of different things. I'll say this. The last group of really good leaders that I thought they had that was like a bunch of older guys that kind of carried it was the year Sam Foltz passed away in that senior class. So Tommy and Westerkamp and Brandon Riley and Ross DeZuris and some of the guys on defense and a lot more walk-ons, to be honest with you. And they had kind of stuck through the program for 5 years. They came here under Bo and they persevered under Riley. And then, you know, Sam passed away. And I think that galvanized things a little bit. And that was a good group. You know, that was a strong group, not perfect, you know, not by any means were they perfect, but they were good. Like they cared about each other and they played pretty hard and they won 9 games, and they probably didn't have the talent to win 9, but they did. And that group was pretty good. And since then, I think it's been kind of up and down. Thought they had a pretty good group last year that kind of carried them through, and they had a pretty good group 2 years ago. The leadership wasn't the issue 2 years ago. It was god awful quarterback play, and that's not all on the quarterbacks, as we all know. Like that, some of that is just the unfortunate injuries and picking the wrong transfer, whatever. It doesn't matter. But I think they're going to have good leadership this year. I like some of the guys in the secondary. I think their linemen are good leaders. Dylan's got to do a lot of it. He has to do it. Like, it's his team. He's a sophomore. It doesn't matter. He's high profile. He's the face of the program. He's the guy that's organizing the off-season workouts. I know it's a lot to put on him. It's probably not fair, but some of it is on him. Like, he's got to, in those moments when it's really hard, and they're going to have those, they're going to go 3 drives, 3 and out, or they're going to go 3 drives, fumble, 3 and out, interception. That's going to happen this season because, the team is human. He's got to be able to be the one that brings them back together. You can say it's a lineman. Sure. Can Henry Lutovsky get in a huddle and go, come on, guys? Yes, of course. Can Emmett Johnson do that? He can. Can Dane Key say, hey, let me draw on my experiences in the SEC? Of course. But when the program's been really good, it tracks to the quarterback. It really does. It's not perfect. It's not 1-to-1. There were teams that Nebraska's had that have been great that didn't necessarily have great quarterback play. But there's a relationship there, and it often is a relationship with the leader at quarterback. It's the leader. It's Tommy. It's Turner. It's Steve Taylor. It's Eric Crouch in those last couple of years once he, finally got the job and earned it all the way in 2000 and 2001. It's, it's that. It's Zach Taylor. It's Joe Gans. It's Tommy Armstrong, who was imperfect, but cared and played hard and willed the team to wins that they haven't won in the last 7 years. So Dylan, some of it's on him. And I think Holgerson and Glenn Thomas and Matt Rhule all know that. And I think Dylan knows it. He's just got to go do it. Success would help. Beating Cincinnati would be a big start, because then they can play 2 games. They're going to just, roll over those 2 teams. And then when Michigan comes to town is when it gets real. You got to beat Cincinnati, then you win those next 2, and then Michigan comes to town, and everything's important that week, because Michigan's a big deal now. I try to tell people this. I understand that their offense is deeply challenged, but Michigan has everyone's respect in terms of its physicality and toughness. Nobody thinks Michigan's weak. And so when they come to town, your expectation is, even if you think they're a bunch of cheaters, right? You cannot cheat physicality. And so if Michigan goes on the field in 2023, and yeah, maybe they got Nebraska's signals, but their defensive and offensive linemen will kick the crap out of you, and it doesn't take Connor Stallions to do that. And so Nebraska will have to meet that physicality, and Dylan will have to look down, he'll have to look at that defense coming at him, and he'll have to deal with it. And quarterbacks like Jalen Milroe and Will Howard, and in some ways even Dylan Gabriel, really struggled to do that last year. And so, they're no joke. And their defensive coordinator is no joke. He's an incredible coordinator. And so, it'll get real in that 4th week, and that's when Dylan will probably have to pull on the reserves of leadership and say, this is the week when I have to have everything together, and I got to be ready to roll, because it's going to test me like few games have.
I agree with you on Michigan. I think that's why they do get the benefit of the doubt this year. It's because their standard is definitely the standard. It is the level of physicality and discipline. Although the NCAA may just be getting ready to hammer them, so I can't wait to see what happens there.